I just wanted to show you this. This is Shadow, and yes, it's a cat and not some ridiculous ball of fur. Hey, girl. Yeah, there it is. There's the cat head. Oh, there you are! Oh, there you are, my beauty! Oh, you're so beautiful! You're so beautiful! Aww. Hi everyone, this is Payana and welcome to my video. It's been a tough week for me. I have been so stressed that I have actually been physically sick for the past 2 days. It's been fun. So yeah, it's taken a lot of energy to actually sit down, put on some makeup and film this, but yeah. The terrible thing is, I woke up in like the middle of Tuesday night. It was about 4 a.m. and I knew I was going to be sick. I was like, oh, I get this like pain in my stomach whenever I'm really, really stressed and I know I'm going to throw up. And because I was in this kind of weird half sleep, half awake state, my brain was trying to make sense of what was going on. And because I've been reading a lot of dragon related stuff lately, I've finished the 6th book in the Temeraire series. I've been rereading Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey, and I'm currently reading The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. My brain just kept telling me, if you're gonna be sick, it's because of the dragons. No brain, it's not. Oh yeah, it's been weird lately. But anyway, this video is about a non-dragon related book, Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman, and I actually do have notes for this. I actually did sit down and take notes, quite a lot of notes, and I have tabs and everything, so I actually did my work properly on this one. This is the second novel in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, and yeah, it basically, like, when I did my the video about Scythe, and where is it? Here it is. I really wanted to learn more about the Thunderhead. The Thunderhead's this kind of AI which rules over the utopian futuristic world that the Scythes live in. And the Scythes can't interact with the Thunderhead. They're the only people in the whole world who can't ask it for help or ask it to do anything. They have to do everything themselves. So the first book was all about the Scythes, not so much about the Thunderhead. But this really is, like, this is everything you need to know about the Thunderhead. In the first novel, we got to follow the stories of Citra and Rowan, two apprentice Scythes. And the Scythes, in this world, this is a world where death has been conquered. No one dies anymore, either of natural or unnatural causes. They are immortal, and even if they do die, like if they get run over by a car or something, they are simply taken to a revival centre and brought back to life. So the Scythes are the only people who are essentially licensed killers. They are employed to regulate the population and glean, as they call it, a certain percentage of human beings in order to keep, like, the, you know, to keep some kind of rollover, basically. So Citra and Rowan in the first book finished their apprenticeships, and Citra became a Scythe. She became Scythe Anastasia. Rowan, however, didn't become a Scythe. He had a very rocky road with a very tyrannical Scythe called Scythe Goddard. And after that, he goes rogue and becomes Scythe Lucifer. And he goes out into the world and decides to murder Scythes who are being unethical in his eyes. So the Scythes divide themselves into two groups. You've got the Old Guard and the New Order. And the New Order are ones who believe that they should take pleasure in killing. And the Old Guard believe that they should kill ethically, respectfully, and they don't take pleasure in it, but they just see it as a necessity. And yeah, they have very different viewpoints basically, and they are in opposition with each other. And the problem with the New Order is they go out there and do very cruel things, and that's what Scythe Lucifer's trying to fight against. So Citra and her mentor, Scythe Curie, are very much members of the old guard. They really believe in gleaning ethically, respecting people, respecting the families of those departed people. So that's how book 1 ended. So in book 2 we get the continuation of Citra and Rowan's life. So Citra is now a full-blown Scythe, junior Scythe. She's still living with her mentor, Scythe Curie, and she still has to answer to her, but she is a Scythe and she does her job. And she has a rather interesting way of going about it, because she actually warns her victims, I guess, that she gives them a certain amount of time to get their affairs together, and they get to choose how they're going to die. So then they get back in contact with her and say, okay, let's do it like this. And she, I think the first, one of the early scenes we get to see her with a man in a casino, and he wants to die playing, I think he's playing poker or something, or blackjack. And he wants to die doing that, so his family are in a room upstairs, and she gives him a poisoned cocktail. And it's weird in the sense that it is quite heartwarming, this scene. Like, she's come here to kill someone, and I found it really moving. So well done, Neal Shusterman, and getting us to feel like warmth for the process of murdering someone with a poison cocktail. Because of this, Scythe Anastasia / Citra is pretty hated amongst the New Order. Like, they really don't like her. There's a lot of controversy and debate going on about her in the Scythe world. However, the old guard really like her. They really admire her. So she becomes the focus of a lot of attention, a lot of unwanted attention, because obviously this wasn't the point of what she was trying to do. But she does become this kind of icon for the old guard in respecting life and death. This great passage straight after, right as she's about to glean the man in the casino, she says, "This is what the Scythedom was incapable of understanding. They were so focused on the act of killing, they couldn't comprehend what went into the act of dying." So she really wants to bring back the kind of mortal age, as they call it, respect and dignity that the dead and dying did have. And Rowan then, so he's become the Scythe of Scythes, as it were. And there's an interesting passage where that kind of explains how he became what he was, because Goddard really did mould him into the perfect killer, as it were. And there's a passage that I thought was that kind of described that pretty well. Rowan suddenly threw a powerful punch towards the mirror, but the glass didn't shatter, because his fist stopped a hair's breadth from the surface. Such control, such precision. He was a well-tuned machine now, trained for the specific purpose of ending life, and the Scythedom denied him the very thing he was forged from. He could have found a way to live with that, he supposed. If the Scythedom had not been infested with dozens of Scythes, just as cruel and corrupt as Goddard, and if Rowan didn't feel the deep and abiding responsibility to remove them. So he goes out on a crusade to rid the Scythes of the corrupt individuals that move amongst them. However, this doesn't end well for him. We also get to see the official Scythe headquarters, which is a place called Endura. And this is a place where the head Scythes of all the Scythe world live and where they meet. So every single continent has their kind of supreme Scythe. I can't remember what they're called exactly. They're called something or other. Yeah, so they represent like a continent each. You've got North America and Africa, Eurasia and all of that. Okay. And Scythe Anastasia and Scythe Curie get to go there. Also get to find out more about Tiger, Rowan's best friend in book 1, which I really appreciated because he was a pretty fun character. He like was always committing suicide and like jumping off high buildings, only obviously he didn't die, just get brought back to life. It's called like splatting, I think they call it. And it's weird because like in real life it's not fun, right? Obviously people who do that, but in this world it's seen as like a fun and amusing pastime, and it is, because the first time you get to see him he's just being revived in a revival center, and I think I talked about this in the first book. He does this so that his family will notice him, because there's like obviously now people get to live forever, they have very big families, and he's kind of ignored, and they have to pay for his revivals, so it's kind of his way of drawing attention to himself. And after that, he becomes a professional party goer, so someone who's employed to kind of show up and be a pretty face and an amusing person at a party. And he gets employed to do that for a rather strange person in Texas. And he's essentially taught to be a Scythe, and that ends in a rather weird way, because they use his body to bring Goddard back to life. So Rowan, who'd murdered Goddard in the first book, at the end of the first book, one of his followers uses Tiger's body and kind of grafts Goddard's head on it in order to bring him back to life. This book gets so dark. It is a YA series, and it's a bit of an odd YA series, because yes, like Citra and Rowan are teenagers in the first book, but then like now they're adults in the second book. They're both over 18. So I don't know, it's kind of a halfway between YA and actual adult literature, because it does deal with some very serious issues. It deals with them in a really good way, but yeah, this is definitely not for your younger readers, especially the whole part about Goddard being brought back to life and using Tiger's body. I thought that was very, very dark, and what happens to Rowan afterwards and what Goddard does afterwards, it gets really dark. We also get introduced to a new character, which is great. A new character called Grayson, who has essentially been raised by the Thunderhead because his parents kind of got disinterested in him and didn't look after him and abandoned him. So he, like, the Thunderhead is essentially his parent. And that's really interesting, because this is how we get really into the Thunderhead and what the Thunderhead's about for non-Scythes, like the rest of the population, through this character Grayson, who's always talking to the Thunderhead, and the Thunderhead's always answering him and encouraging him. In the first book, the Thunderhead kind of reminded me of Aiden from the Illumini series. In this book, not so much though. Aiden, the AI in Illumini, seemed more like cold and calculating, whereas the Thunderhead came across as way more caring, actually like having a genuine interest. It felt like it really understood the point of getting, you know, humanity to move forwards and to live on, unlike Aiden, who just seemed to be following its basic programming up to a point. I'll talk more about that when I get into the Toll, the third book in this series. But yeah, the Thunderhead, there is a lot about the Thunderhead, and because in the first book, all the chapters like began with a passage from a Scythe's diary, because they have to keep a diary every single day. But in this book, every single chapter starts with some element of reflection from the Thunderhead. And it's interesting because you get to learn how it dealt with humanity, how it dealt with saving the earth from the destruction humanity had wreaked upon it, like pollution, like wars, getting people to like live happily, and even went as far as renaming cities. and just the amount of work that took for it and how it did it completely benevolently. The Thunderhead is essentially, as I said in the first video, a completely benevolent dictator. And people really do depend on him, like Grayson, who, like the Thunderhead became a surrogate parent for Grayson. So he wants to become a Nimbus agent, and the Nimbus agents are the ones who like work in a partnership with the Thunderhead. They kind of reinforce the Thunderhead's workings, especially when it comes to people who are unsavory. So people who are unsavory are the sort of criminals in this world. And Grayson later goes undercover and becomes an unsavory and has to go undercover to try and find things out. And he has a very kind of special partnership with the Thunderhead in order to work out what is going on in the Scythe world, because obviously the AI can't see everything and needs to understand and help the Scythes understand without directly communicating with them in its own way. So it kind of goes through all these different little loopholes to get that to work. And Grayson, so I really like the unsavories, because they're not like criminals, like dangerous criminals, but they want to live, like most of them actually want to live this lifestyle, the ones who do actually stay unsavory. And one of the punishments, I guess, that they have is that they cannot talk to the Thunderhead anymore. They become like Scythes, whereas they can't rely on the Thunderhead and they have to sort themselves out. And usually that is punishment enough for them to not like repeat whatever crime that they did. But the ones who remain unsavory actually choose to live that way. And Grayson gets to kind of mix with all these people. And there's a wonderful scene where he goes into a bar, and they're like the waiters and the staff of the bar, they're essentially there to be beaten up. Like that's their role. Like they're there to serve as punching balls. And so it's all kind of made up, it's all fake, supposed to emulate the lifestyle of someone who would be a genuine bad boy. But it's all like, you know, make believe and play. The Thunderhead really does find the best and most efficient way of doing absolutely everything. And he even runs kind of trials on people in different parts of the planets. We get to hear about certain parts of the planet where people have gills or people have wings, or like in Texas where the side doesn't have cameras in everyone's homes. It just kind of lets them get on with stuff just to see what's going to happen. And the great thing is, like, the Thunderhead always says, I don't make mistakes. Everything's done for a purpose. Even if it goes wrong, well, then it goes to prove that wasn't the right way of doing things, and, you know, but it still had a purpose. We also get to see a different side of the religious order that we kind of glimpsed at in the first novel. The Tonists, I think they are, who believe in the like supreme resonance or whatever it is, and they worship this tuning fork. Like, it all seems really weird, but we get to see a different side of them in this novel, because Grayson eventually has to hide from the Scythes, and Scythe Anastasia sends him to a Tonist monastery, and he becomes one of them. And interestingly, he doesn't really kind of embrace the beliefs of this religion, but he just kind of goes along with it because he thinks it's a nice place to be, and the people are nice there, and they all accept him, and it's great. And so he kind of finds his way in this monastery by pretending, essentially. And interestingly, the person who looks after him, the curate, also kind of implies that he is also pretending, that he doesn't really believe in this. So that's interesting. And my god, it becomes more interesting in book 3, so we'll get back to that. every single aspect of this world, of this society, is studied and, you know, kind of torn apart and poked at some point, and I really do appreciate that. The world building in this is particularly good, and my god, the cliffhangers. It's really been a long time since I read something that I got this kind of deeply passionate about, to the extent where normally when I read a series, and this is true even for the Temeraire series, which I'm hugely passionate about, I will always read maybe 1 or 2 novels between, like, 2 novels and a sequel. I won't read them all in a row because, you know, my brain just normally doesn't like that. I need to kind of go off and do something else in the meantime. But my god, the cliffhanger at the end of this book, it just blew my mind to such an extent where I was like, nope, I'm not going to go off and read anything else. I'm not going to read anything else before I finish this trilogy. So I did. So I went straight off and read The Toll, and it's so good. It is so good. So this video is already going to be really long, so I'm going to do a separate video about The Toll. It's a lot longer than the other 2 books. So I'll come back and do a separate video about that. But yeah, I was deeply satisfied with this. I got everything I'd hoped for out of it. Everything out of Rowan. I was a bit, and I say that, it's not entirely true. I had hoped that Rowan as Scythe Lucifer would get kind of deeper into the killing scythes and going off on this, like, crusade against corrupt scythes. But he doesn't actually get that far. He does become this kind of frightening figure in the Scythe's collective mind, which, like, we get a glimpse of that at the end of the first novel, we get a glimpse of that at the beginning of the second novel, and he does become their scapegoat for what happens next. So obviously his being Scythe Lucifer has a role, but it doesn't really pan out the way I expected it to. He gets captured by Scythe Goddard, and it all goes very wrong for him, basically. But he does manage to wriggle his way out of it, because he is a supremely smart character. I really like Rowan. I really like Rowan as a character. I like Citra as well. Not in the same way. Citra kind of goes with the flow. She has interesting ideas and then gets kind of tied up in something she wasn't prepared for. Whereas Rowan kind of just takes everything as it comes and, you know, soldiers on in his own way. So yeah, this series is so good. I was really surprised at how good this was. And again, I mentioned the cover of the first book. I love these covers. They are so amazing. They are very dramatic. I like a dramatic cover. I do. So yes, that was my video on the second book in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, Thunderhead. So that's it from me from this video. That was Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. Truly brilliant sequel to a brilliant novel, and I really appreciate how, you know, in the first novel we're just introduced to the Scythe portion of the world. Now we're introduced to the Thunderhead portion of the world, and in book 3 we get introduced to something else again. So yes, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Don't hesitate to subscribe, leave me a comment, tell me what you think, and I'll see you all soon. Bye bye.